So in your intent, we see this column called context. And if we click on this dropdown, we'll see that there is an input context and an output context. So basically, an input context is what goes into the conversation, and an output context is what flows out of the conversation. For example, here the chatbot asked me, "Are you a teacher?" And then I said, "Yes, I am a teacher." The information that I am a teacher, my response to this question will be considered an output context of this intent. And now I want my chatbot to remember that output context. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here at the output context button. And to add a output context, you basically just need to give it a name. So I'm going to name it asking name 003 to signify that this is the output context that's coming out of intent 3. And now I'm going to hit the save button. Okay, now I've just added that output context into my intent 3, and I want to continue the conversation based on our script. So the first thing we need to do is we need to add more intents. And remember that we have two possible responses from the user. The first one is the user is a teacher. The second one is the user isn't a teacher. So since the user are you guys, I'm going to start with I am not a teacher. So I'm going to go to intent, and then I'm going to hit create intent. And I'll name this intent asking name 004-not teacher. This is to signify that this intent is to handle the case where the user isn't a teacher. So when the user isn't a teacher, the user would say, "No, I am not a teacher." Hit enter, or user could simply say no. And when we follow the script, when the user says no, we want to ask a user if they are students. So here I'm going to add text response. Are you a student? Hit enter. And now remember that we want to connect this intent 4 with intent 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in both input context and output context. And what would our input context be? Well, remember that we want to use the information that's the output for intent 3. And in intent 3, we have an output context called asking name 003. So to connect intent 3 and intent 4, basically what we're going to do is we're going to add the output context for intent 3 here as the input context for intent 4. Okay? But then after we added this intent, we see that here an output context is automatically generated. That is very convenient. However, it is named the same as our input context. And if we think about it, the last question for this intent is, are you a student? And if we're following the script, we know that after the user is being asked, are you a student? We also need to handle the situation where the user says, yes, I am a student, or the user says, no, I am not a student. This means that the context that is produced by this intent will be likely used as the input context for the following intents. But if we look at our output context and our input context, they're named the same, which could be a little confusing, right? So to further customize this, we're going to change this output context into a better name called asking name 004, so that we know that this is the output context that is produced by intent 4. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save it. And now I want to try what I have done so far and see if our intents are connected. So I'm going to simply type lesson 1 in the Try It Now console and hit enter. And I'm being asked about my last name. I'll just say Lee. And then the chat will ask, what's your first name? I'm going to say Paying. And the chatbot says, hi Paying, are you a teacher? Remember that in order for the chatbot to recognize your name, you need to add your name as one of the training phrases and link it with an entity in intent 3. Then I'm going to set, no, I'm not a teacher. And then the chatbot asks me, are you a student? And now I know that my intent 3 and my intent 4 are successfully connected. Okay, so I'm going to save it once again. And now I want to go handle the situation where the user says, yes, I am a teacher.